On December 4th, 1911, the day the Triangle Trial finally began, a long Indian summer came to an end. 5 inches of snow fell on New York. As always happens during the first blizzard of the season, the city seemed to pause for a moment. Streets, buildings, and automobiles were as white and pure as a wedding cake. Then, as always happens, the pause ended and the snow began to melt. The city's horse carriage drivers were on strike, so the holiday shoppers were forced to trudge through brown slush with their bags and parcels. But I saw men and women laughing as they did so, because there is no place as frivolous and thrilling as New York City in the Christmas season.
Henry W. Savage presents the supreme dramatic novelty by Walter Brown, every man's opinion of every woman.
And President Taft and family eat 40-pound turkey.
Toy dogs on show at the Waldorf. Feminine lovers of many breeds exhibit pets with varying success.
10th big week, Lou Field's musical success, The Never Holmes. This is exquisite fooling.
Handsome socialist Christmas gifts. Pillow tops with beautiful socialist designs and motifs, furnished on a high-grade embroidery fabric and stamped in fast colors for outlining. Also, a few lush portraits in all colors of Karl Marx. Come and see these astonishing bargains.
Judge Thomas C.T. Crane to hear case of shirtwaist kings.
Triangle bosses mobbed. Victims' relatives show hatred when men appear in court.
How we can do stuff.
Disgusting. What kind of justice can this poor girl expect when these men, who made the hours, set the pay scale, had girls follow to the bathroom if they were suspected of wasting precious seconds of company time? How can this girl expect justice when these men are on trial before a jury composed entirely of other men? Until we have women on juries, no woman can expect a fair trial. And for a woman to be granted that basic right, she must first have the right to cast a ballot for the candidate of her choice.
What about my Margaret? How does that help her?
Justice for all women does honor to all women.
She's dead. She can't vote.
How do you want your daughter to be remembered? As just another girl burned up in a shop? Or as part of a mighty angelic host who helped her sisters earn the right to control their own destinies?
My daughter burned up, burned to ashes. You don't deserve to say one word in this place until you know such grief.
All women grieve. It's one of the many burdens we carry for our men. I myself have buried 2 husbands. I have torn the hair from my head. I have wept. We all do that. But when the tears have dried, what do?
I start crying. Again. And I keep crying.
To you aggrieved relatives gathered here, I can only say, pray to God. She will help you.
This is my daughter, Margaret. Margaret Schwartz.
Gentlemen of the jury, before we begin, I would like to remind you not to be affected by any mourning or any weeping in the corridors. We are here to examine facts only. Mr. Bostwick, you're open.
Gentlemen of the jury, on March 25th of this year, a terrible fire took the lives of 146 people, all of them dead within the space of half an hour. Near the north end of the first cutter's table on the Green Street side of the 8th floor of the building is where the fire started. When the cry of fire finally reached those on the 9th floor, they ran in every direction. Some ran to the Green Street door. Some went to the roof. Some got on the freight elevators. Some ran to the fire escape on the north side of the building. Others ran to the Washington Place elevator, which made 2 or 3 trips and escaped that way. Others ran to the Washington Place door. One of these was Margaret Schwartz, now dead. Gentlemen, That door was locked. Locked in defiance of the law. Section 80 of the New York labor law reads that all doors leading in or to any such factory shall not be locked, bolted, or fastened during working hours. Shall not be locked. After we have shown you that Margaret Schwartz burned to death behind that locked door on the 9th floor, we will ask you for your judgment upon the evidence according to your consciences.
I have no opening to make. It is a case that, to my mind, is perfectly clear. There's not anything I know about the manufacturing business.
You did not propose to open, Mr. Stoyer?
No, Your Honor. I would like to put witnesses right on, and I would like to get through just as quickly as possible, and I respectfully ask that we now adjourn.
I think it may be within the province of counsel to determine the extent to which he likes to open to the jury, but I think he ought to outline the theory of his defense.
It is entirely optional.
If you want me to, if you think it will help the people's case or will help to clarify the subject, I would be delighted to do it, though I do not consider my type of talk to be at a premium anywhere. Would you like me to tell you what my defense is? We propose to show you that year in and year out in the Washington Place store, on the 8th and 9th and 10th floors, the key was all the time in the lock, and that it was never without the lock. I myself have seen and spoken to 2 girls who will testify before you that when the fire broke out, they went to the Washington Place store and they opened the door without any difficulty. If by some terrible chance, in the panic that followed the fire, some poor girl pulled the key from the door, then certainly Mr. Harris and Mr. Blank did not know that this was so. And if this dreadful error was made without their knowledge, then they are guilty of nothing. I hope that was helpful.
Chief Croker, how long have you been chief of the New York City Fire Department?
12 years.
And in that time, how many fires has your department responded to at the Triangle Factory?
6. The fire on March 25th of this year was the 6th.
Please, tell us what happened when you tried to enter the 9th floor of the Ash Building on that day.
We tried to enter through the Washington Place door, but we couldn't budge it. So we chopped through it with axes.
Did you take the time to examine the lock to verify the bolt was thrown?
No, sir. There were girls burning inside. But the door was either locked or shut firmly enough that axes were the only way in.
And what did you see after you had chopped through the door?
In the drifting smoke, I saw bodies burned to bare bones, skeletons bending over sewing machines.
How many bodies did you find on the 9th floor?
There were 5 at the machines. I found 2 in a little crevice behind the dressing room. 1 right directly in front of it.
And did you find any in front of the Washington Place door?
Yes, sir. I found 11 bodies there, piled on top of each other.
But you didn't look at the lock?
No.
And was one of those bodies later identified as that of Margaret Schwartz?
It was.
So you can't say for certain whether the door was locked or not?
No, sir.
Thank you, Chief Croker. I would like to commend your gallantry during this crisis.
Miss Monick, when you came to work in the morning at the defendant's factory, what door did you use?
The Green Street door.
Did you ever go up the stairs of the Ash Building?
Only when I work on Sundays do we have to go up the stairs.
And what stairs did you go up?
The Green Street stairs.
Out of habit, you always used the same door?
That was the door all the girls used. Nobody ever used the Washington Place door.
Did you ever ask Mr. Harris about the door?
I did not ask him. I used to be afraid of him.
Did you try to use that door during the fire on March 25th?
I did.
What happened?
I could not open it.
You're afraid of Mr. Harris?
Sure, he was the one we saw most of the time. He would come down to the 9th floor sometimes and look around 4 or 5 minutes.
Did you ever see Mr. Blank?
No, not very often.
Well, what do you mean by no, not very often?
What does it matter? I was scared.
You do like to argue some, don't you, little girl? Huh? You do not really mean to say that you were afraid of these two men,
Well,
do you?
not exactly afraid, but you know how they are. I was like nothing to them because I was only a working girl. I know that when a girl don't do nothing right, she gets discharged. That's why I did not talk to them.
1,600 degrees of heat killed 146 ash fire victims.
Mrs. Belmont, after hearing session of court, says English justice is better.
Waste men get court guards. Threats by mob as they went to luncheon had alarmed Harrison Blank.
Mr. Schwartz, we deeply regret your loss.
So do I. If it's a job you're looking for, we'll find a place for you in the new factory.
No, that's not what I'm looking for.
Then what can we do for you?
When my sister burned up, her pay burnt up too. I'm here to collect that money.
I see.
I'm afraid we can't help you. All our records were lost in a fire. We have no way of knowing who was paid or wasn't.
But we can talk about a job with a wage that's more than fair.
No, I don't want a job. I want what you owe my sister.
Work would do you good. It would keep your mind off things. It would toughen you up.
What do you know about work?
Excuse me? You know, I worked in a shop. So did Mr. Harris here. He was an apprentice to a tailor in Russia.
So what? I want...
It was somebody's apartment, really. And there were 10 of us, sewing piles of clothes by hand, working by candlelight because there were no windows.
And at the end of the day, we had to fight the man for our pay.
This is where I met Mr. Harris, and we scraped together money because we wanted to make a better shop. Big, open, with the latest machines.
Where everybody gets paid what they're owed.
So pay me!
We can't give you what we don't have.
With all the civil suits against us,
We can only give you a job.
Mr. Moore, what is your profession?
I examine the scenes of fires to determine causes and liability. Mr. Hurwitz, what is your occupation?
Locksmith, sir.
And when did you visit the Ash building?
On April 10th of this year. And you have made a thorough examination of all the doors on the 9th floor of the Ash building?
I have.
Now, Mr. Moore, you found the lock to the Washington Place door on the 9th floor, did you not?
That's correct.
Where did you find it?
It was under some rubbish along the floor, about 11 and a half feet from the doorway.
And is this the lock in question?
That's the lock.
People's Exhibit 30 is the lock from the Washington Place door on the 9th floor of the Ash building.
I object. On March 25th, a fire occurs. And on March 26th, all the conscience of the city is stirred by the terrible catastrophe that has occurred. Hundreds upon hundreds of people go into the debris and seek the bodies. The fire department makes a conclusive and detailed and minute search into that debris. And all the question that is being agitated in the press day after day is locks, 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 and the door was locked, and the pictures of the door, and gentlemen of the jury, nothing is found. When on the 10th of April, as from a clear sky, this man goes to the premises, and within 25 minutes, a lock is discovered on an alleged portion of door that somebody kicked in. And every one of those locks, may it please the gentlemen of the jury, in that building was identical from the 10th floor down to the basement.
Mr. Moore, what makes you certain that this is the lock from the Washington Place door on the 9th floor of the Ash Building?
If you stood inside the Washington Place lock, the hinges of the door would have been on your right. The handle to the door would have been on your left. This lock is a lock for a left-handed door, the only left-handed door on the 9th floor.
Mr. Hurwitz, is this the lock from the 9th floor of the Ash Building on the Washington Place side?
No.
How can you tell?
This piece of wood is 5/8 of an inch narrower than it would have been if it had formed a piece of the door to which it was attached. It is also a fact that the face of this lock is a bit melted. And if this is true, as we see, then that same amount of heat would have melted the tumblers of the lock also.
Mr. Moore, what is the lock made of?
The face and case are made of brass like any old doorknob, but the tumblers are made of cold rolled steel.
And does cold rolled steel react to fire differently than brass?
Brass melts at a much lower temperature.
Which means that it makes perfect sense that the face of this lock might be melted while the tumblers appeared untouched.
That's correct.
What else did the condition of this lock tell you?
That the door was closed during the fire. If it had been opened, the tumblers and spindle would have been exposed and may have melted in the heat.
Can you open the lock so that we can see the tumbler?
Must be melted in there.
No matter. Was there anything else that suggested that this door was locked?
Yes, the tongue of the lock was extended when I found it.
I object. Is it really to be urged upon this court that because the tongue of the lock, I think you call it, was extended on the 25th day of March 1911, is that even the slightest evidence that the lock had its tongue extended on the 25th day of March 1911? Is it even to be urged upon this court in a civilized country where the jurisprudence is practiced as it is practiced here?
Regardless of the condition of the tongue, we have shown that this is the lock from the door in question.
May I?
Please.
Can you open this, Mr. Hurwitz? Now, Mr. Moore, if Mr. Hurwitz is able to remove the innards of your lock so easily, they could have been removed and replaced thousands of times between the fire on March 25th and the day that you arrived on April 11th. Isn't that so? Speaking as an expert, Mr. Moore.
Evidently, they could have been.
Now, you say this is a left-handed lock.
That's correct.
And now that Mr. Hurwitz has done you the service of opening it, could he convert it into a right-handed lock?
Yes, he could.
Then there is no such thing as a right-handed or left-handed lock. There you are.
Do you work in a fire trap? Are the doors locked during working hours? Are the windows barred or nailed shut? Are there freight elevators on every floor? Are the freight elevators closed during the day? Are there fire escapes on every floor? And is the way to the fire escape free? Are there straps near motors or engines? Are the staircases made of wood or metal? Write down your answers to these questions and bring or send them down to the Women's Trade Union League, 43rd East, 22nd Street. Your names will not be used.
Miss Alton, what was your relationship with Margaret Schwartz?
She was my best friend.
So when you heard the cry of fire, you were quite aware of her whereabouts?
I was.
Can you tell me what you saw of the last moments of Margaret Schwartz's life?
I was by the Washington Place door, and Bernstein, the manager's brother, was trying to open the door. He was jumping around like a wildcat. Margaret tried to open the door. I pushed her on the side and I said, "Wait, I will open that door." I tried, pulled the handle in and out, all ways, and I couldn't open it. And then I saw Margaret bending down on her knees. I noticed the trail of her dress and the ends of her hair began to burn. And then a big smoke came and I said, "Margaret!" And she didn't reply.
Thank you very much, Miss Altman.
Did you have a sister working in the place?
No, sir.
And you are currently living in Philadelphia?
Yes, sir.
When was the last time you saw Mr. Bostwick?
Saturday.
Oh, he took you up to the building, did he?
Yes, sir.
And he pointed out to you where the Washington Place store is?
I had to point it out to him. He showed me the plan and asked me to show him where I saw Margaret last. I couldn't show him very well on the plan, for I had picked it in my mind as if it were before the fire. So he took me to the building.
You have told us that she was right up against the door, isn't that so?
She was right near the door with her hands at the knob.
With her hands at the knob?
At the knob.
But you couldn't tell him that before you went up to the lock?
I don't believe I told him. I think I told him. I'm not sure though, for when I gave my statement first, I was sick that time.
Also, you didn't tell it the same way as you are telling it now?
I'm telling it the same way, just the same way.
Or did you tell them that she had her hand at the knob?
I don't remember exactly whether I told the knob or not. It was 9 months ago.
Did you have a sister who visited you at the place?
I never did.
Have you got a sister at all?
I have a sister, yes, sir.
How many?
I have 5 sisters.
And does one of your sisters live in New York?
They never did.
Now, I want you to tell me your story over again, just as you told it before.
What kind of story do you mean?
Just tell us what you did when you heard the cry of fire. Hmm?
I went to the Green Street windows to look for fire escapes. I didn't find any, and Margaret Schwartz was with me. I turned around and Margaret disappeared from me. I went to the dressing rooms, bent my face over the sink. I went out from the dressing rooms and then to the Washington side, to the door, trying to open the door. But there I saw Bernstein, the manager's brother, trying to open the door. But he couldn't, and he went to the windows.
Now, there's something you left out there, I think, Miss Alterman. When Bernstein was jumping around, do you remember what that was like? Like a wildcat, wasn't it?
Like a wildcat.
Well, you did just leave that part out now, didn't you? Just now, when you were telling us about Bernstein, that he was jumping around like a wildcat.
Like a wildcat or a wild dog. I told it that way to imagine, just exactly.
Now, you heard the signal or the bell for the shutting off of the power, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And you got up and left your table, is that it?
Yes, sir.
And was it at that point that you went to the dressing room?
Yes, sir.
And was that the only time that you went to the dressing room? Was it?
Yes, sir.
And of course I'm speaking of that afternoon. I mean that afternoon.
Of that day, yes, sir.
Now tell us from there what you did after that time.
After going out from the dressing rooms,
Yes.
I noticed Bernstein, the manager's brother, at the Washington side windows. He stuck his head out, then drew himself back. He wanted to jump, I suppose, but he was afraid. He was jumping like a wildcat on the walls, and then I saw the flames cover him. I went to the center of the room. I had a purse with me, and that purse began to burn. I pressed it to my heart to put out the fire, and the whole door was aflame. There was a red curtain of fire.
You never spoke to anybody about what you were going to tell us when you came here, did you?
No, sir.
You have got a father and a mother and 4 sisters.
5 sisters. I have a father, I have no mother, I have a stepmother.
And you never spoke to anybody else about it?
No, sir.
Well, they never asked about it?
They asked me once, and I told them, and then they stopped me. They didn't want me to talk anymore about it.
And you didn't study the words in which you would tell it?
No, sir.
Now tell us from there what you did. Starting from where your purse was burning.
I pressed it to my heart to put out the fire, and I took my coat, turned it with the fur to my face, the lining on the outside, got hold of a bunch of dresses that were lying on the examining table, covered up my head, and tried to run through the flames on the Green Street side. The whole door was a red curtain of fire.
A red curtain of fire.
That's right.
You never studied those words, did you?
No, sir.
Did you receive on the 12th of October, 1911, a letter inviting you to 151 Clinton Street on the 3rd floor to meet with the lawyer of the Ladies' Waist and Dressmakers Union?
No, sir.
Well, didn't you go on October 16th to 151 Clinton Street? And didn't the lawyer go over the story of the fire with each one of you girls?
No.
Well, now, didn't every one of the girls receive a letter to go down to 151 Clinton Street?
No.
Now, Miss Alterman, each time you have answered Mr. Stoyer's question, you have tried to repeat it in the same language that you first told it here in court, have you not?
Yes, sir.
And you remember every detail of that story just as well today as if it had happened yesterday.
Yes, sir.
And it is all true.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell that story in any other words than you have used here?
In any other words? I remember it this way, just exactly how it was done.
Will you please answer my question? Can you tell it in any other words than you have told here?
Probably I
As a matter of
said-
fact, you did on Saturday, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And as a matter of fact, you did in that statement use different words than you have stated now.
Yes, sir.
And you could repeat over whatever you told me on Saturday in those other words.
Yes, sir.
Will you state to the jury why you tried to repeat what you told Mr. Stoyer in the same language that you used the first time you told it?
Because he asked me to tell the very same story over and over.
And did you think you had to tell it in the same words?
No, I didn't think. I just told it the way he asked me to say it over and over, and I told it in the same words.
I have not spoken to you since you arrived here, have I?
No, sir, not a word.
You say you can tell the jury the same words that you used in your written statement?
Probably I can. My written statement was 9 months ago.
I offer the statement to the jury.
Give us the words that are in the statement. Please, now.
Shall I tell you just as in the statement?
Yes, the words in the statement.
Well, I gave a very long statement.
Start with the words that are in the statement, please, Miss Altman, and not an explanation, if you can. Start with the words. Tell us how you began the statement, and then give us the words in the statement.
Well, it would be 4:45, I think, on Saturday that I started the beginning of my statement.
Please tell the court what you said.
I can't remember what I said.
Mr. Bostwick asked you before whether you can tell the jury the same words that you used in your written statement, and you said yes. Now you say you can't?
I already told you what happened. There is only one way it happened.
You can only tell it the way you practiced it?
I can only tell it the way I remember it.
Nothing more.
Prosecution rests in triangle case.
155 witnesses condemn Harrison Blank. Triangle women were locked in. Fact also brought out that owner Harris's sister was trapped by barred door.
New York has a long history of tragic fires. In 1905, the tenement on Allen Street was consumed by flames. 20 people, all immigrants, died, including 10 children who were found trapped in front of a locked skylight leading to the roof. Mayor McClellan was running for re-election, so it was immediately clear that someone would have to be held responsible. All eyes turned to the Tenement House Department Commissioner. The commissioner testified to the coroner that the Allen Street building had been inspected 14 times in the 6 months preceding the fire. and that his inspectors regularly cleared furniture, clothing, and perishable food from the fire escapes, only to have them cluttered again within hours of their departure. Despite these facts and his strong denial of responsibility, the commissioner was forced to resign. The scandalous fire ruined his political career. The commissioner's name was Thomas C.T. Crane. And nearly 6 years later, who sat on the bench? Who was the judge weighing the evidence against Harrison Blank? The same Thomas C.T. Crane.
Miss Levantini, did you work for the defendants at the time of the fire?
I did.
And do you now?
No, sir.
Miss Middleton, are you currently employed by Mr. Harris and Mr. Blank?
Yes?
I see.
Miss Levantini, do you have a civil suit pending against the defendants?
I do.
So why are you here testifying for their defense?
To tell the truth.
Miss Middleman, you worked near Miss Levantini, didn't you?
Yes, sir. On the first row of machines from the Washington Place side.
And when the power was shut off on March 25th, where did you go?
I went to May's table.
I was just in the dressing room coming out of it when Ida called me.
Then we heard a noise and May came along and asked what was the matter. I said I don't know.
We went to the Washington Place elevators, but it didn't come up. She says, May, I think the elevator must have dropped.
So I went to the elevator
And I listened at the Washington Place side, but I didn't hear no screaming in the elevator.
Then May said, Ida, let's go to the door. So the two of us rushed to the door, and I opened the door, and then all
Did you turn the key in the lock yourself and find it unlocked?
No, I did not try the lock myself.
The key was right in the door, tied to a string. I turned the key.
The key was in that Washington Place door, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And it was attached to that door by a string, wasn't it?
Yes, sir, by the string, about 3 or 4 inches long, a piece of tape or something, about a ½ inch wide.
What color was the string?
It was a checked piece of string, about ½ inch wide, if not more.
So you turned the key attached to the string, and then...
Ida opened the door.
Miss Middleton, when you gave a statement to the district attorney, did you tell him that you opened the door yourself?
Now, which one of us turned the key or the knob, I couldn't remember then, but now I do remember that it was May.
I turned the key, she pulled the door, I walked out first.
And I walked out with her.
Were there any other persons around the door when you did this?
No, I was the first one at the door.
When you got out into the hallway, what did you see?
I looked down. I seen girls running down the stairs and then flames and smoke came right up.
And all I saw were heads and the smoke was thick. So I ran back.
And after you passed through the open Washington Place door a second time, did you see Margaret Schwartz?
I didn't look to see who was or was not there. I turned right in and I ran to the elevators where I thought I could get down much quicker.
After you had been out of this Washington Place door and looked over the stairway, did you lock the door again?
No, sir.
Did you ever talk to the Italian consul about the fire?
I did.
And did you tell him that you opened the door?
I don't remember.
I have here an affidavit from the Italian consul saying that you made no mention of opening the door. Did that part come to you after you talked to Mr. Bernstein?
No, I told the truth.
And what is the truth?
I opened the door.
You said Ida opened the door.
I turned the key in the lock.
And that is your memory of what you actually did, not what someone told you you did?
It is.
How often have you talked to Miss Levantini about all this?
We're best friends. We talk all the time.
And has your talk with May Levantini made the thing fresh in your mind?
Yes, sir, she told me it all.
She told you all about it.
She told me about how the two of us did go in the hall, and that is what I do remember. And about the door, she told me she saw me open it. May says she saw me open the door.
And you believe that?
I do. Well, that is at first I didn't remember, but being that I was after May, then she said she was at the door first. It made sense that I pulled the door.
Because May said so. It is perfectly clear, isn't it?
Certainly.
Mr. Bernstein, what is your occupation?
I'm the superintendent and manager of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory.
How long have you held that position?
12 years.
And in those 12 years, how often did you pass from one floor of the Ash building to another?
More than I can count.
And which door did you enter and leave the 9th floor?
Either the Green Street door or the Washington Place door,
And
depending on where I was.
So, you used the Green Street and the Washington Place doors indiscriminately?
Yes, sir.
And were those doors ever locked during working hours?
Never.
Did you ever lock either of these doors yourself?
At the end of each day, I turned the key in the Washington Place door, but left the key in the lock.
Why did you do that?
So that the girls would leave by the Green Street door and have their purses searched by the watchman.
Did you ever tell Mr. Harris or Mr. Blank that you were turning the key in the Washington Place door on March 25th of this year?
No, sir.
Mr. Bernstein, were you forcibly removed from the criminal courts building earlier this year?
I was.
Because you were attempting to bribe witnesses?
No, sir. I was there in answer to a subpoena. And look, there's the young man who served me the subpoena. Did you serve me that? Answer me. Did you or did you not? Look, he's smiling.
Mr. Bernstein, you were seen by a bailiff talking to girls on their way in to testify before a grand jury. What did you say to them?
When this man came out, I was talking to one of the girls, but it had nothing to do with the case.
Did you offer this girl money for any reason?
No.
Did you not visit May Levantini at her home?
I did, because she was sick.
Did you give money to May Levantini to say that she left the 9th floor by the Washington Place store?
No.
Did you suggest she change her version of the story after she talked to the Italian consul?
No!
There's no need to shout, Mr. Bernstein. Since the fire, has your salary increased?
That's none of your business.
Mr. Bernstein.
I'm making more now than before.
How much more?
About $3 more a week.
People's Exhibit 31 is the payroll records of the Triangle Waste Company. Mr. Bernstein, what is the difference between your salary in March 1909 and on the day of the fire?
It's the same.
So your pay was the same for the 2 years before the fire, but in the 9 months since the fire, you've gotten a raise?
That's right.
And have any of the other employees received comparable raises?
I don't know.
Mr. Bernstein?
No, they haven't.
So you were the only one to get a raise.
Mr. Bernstein, what was your brother's name?
Jacob.
How did he die?
He perished in the fire, sir.
I'm sorry for your loss. But I do have to ask, if your brother was killed by this terrible fire, why are you here testifying for the men who have been blamed for his death?
Because it wasn't their fault. It was an act of God.
Mr. Harris, Mr. Blank, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Now, how do the two of you work as co-proprietors?
I am a designer and a pattern maker, and I oversee production.
I'm mainly concerned with sales.
Mr. Blank, how many people do you employ at the Triangle Waste Company?
In the busy season, about 500 people.
How many shirtwaists can you produce? One day at peak production.
Around 2,000 wastes per day.
2,000 wastes per day. That is impressive. That would make the gross annual income of the Triangle Company about
$1 million per year.
Did your work take you from one floor of the Ash Building to another?
Many times a day.
Did you use the Washington Place door?
Yes, many times.
And did you ever find the Washington Place store on the 9th floor ever locked?
Never.
Not once.
Mr. Harris, you ordered a watchman stationed at the Green Street door on the 9th floor, did you not?
Yes.
Did you order a watchman at the Washington Place door?
No.
Was the reason you ordered a watchman at the Green Street door only because you kept the Washington Place door locked?
No.
The employees could get out any way they wished.
Just open it and see how big it is. Mr. Harris, is theft a major problem in your company?
It is. You can see how many wastes can be crammed into a small space.
What evidence of theft do you have?
We once locked up about 6 girls, and we found in the room of one girl around 2 dozen wastes, and another girl had about 3 dozen wastes.
What action did you take against these thieves?
This was not long after the strike, and we didn't want to make any trouble. So we discharged them.
Yet you declined to press charges against these girls who clearly stole from you?
We could not. Because when we had a few of them arrested and fined, a few of the girls sued us for damages.
We found the best way was to discharge them and not bother with them anymore.
How much in all the instances would you say was the value of all the goods that you found had been taken by these employees?
In 1 year, you mean?
In 1 year.
Prior to the fire?
Yes.
Well, $10 or $8 or $12 or $15, something like that.
You would not say it was over $25, wouldn't you?
I object. This is immaterial.
Did the amount lost to theft each year exceed $25?
It would not exceed that much.
Mr. Harris, what did you do when you realized there was a fire?
I guided girls onto the Washington Place elevators. When they stopped running, I started to holler, "Girls, let's go to the roof!"
Did you fear for your life?
Oh, I was not thinking of that, but the girls were afraid of the smoke. So I said, "Go, one of you, 2 of you, if you can't all go, better at least one should get out." I brought them out onto the roof, climbed to an adjacent building, broke a skylight, and passed back the ladder I found there.
And, Mr. Harris, was your sister on the 9th floor of the Ash Building at the time of the fire?
She was.
Mr. Harris, would you ever allow your own sister to be locked in a room that was even slightly prone to fire?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Blank, what are the ages of your children?
Mildred is 12, and Henrietta is 5.
2 little girls. And where were they at the time of the fire?
They were in the office with me. Their mother had gone south, and I was going to take them shopping.
And what were your first thoughts when you heard the cry of fire?
To get the girls to the roof.
How did you do that?
I picked up Henrietta, and another man picked up Mildred, and we ran out through the smoke. They were screaming and crying even after we got out. And I kissed them.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Harris, did you tell Robert Wilson on March 27th last that the door had to be locked or the employees would steal your fortune?
Who is Robert Wolfson?
Didn't he work for you for 9 years?
Oh, the cutter.
Yes, I know him.
Did you tell him what I asked you?
I never speak to those people.
Did you see him March 27th, 2 days after the fire?
Yes.
And did you tell him that you had to keep the door locked?
I can't remember what I said to him.
Mr. Harris, was there ever any rule in your factory that the Washington Place store on the 9th floor of the Ash building should be locked before the employees left the shop?
No orders were given.
There was no such thing as a locked door on the premises.
Did you know whether the door was locked or unlocked at 4:45 on March 25th of this year?
I did not.
I had no idea.
Defense rests in triangle trial.
Blank cries for children. Harris bemoans stealing.
More witnesses contradict the testimonies of Harrison Blank's girl employees.
Says triangle doors were never locked.
Gentlemen of the jury, I charge that before you find these defendants guilty of manslaughter in the first degree, you must find that this door was locked. You must also find beyond a reasonable doubt that such locking caused the death of Margaret Schwartz. And you must also find that the door was locked with the knowledge of the defendants. Now, do your duty.
The time will come when your time will end, you golden princes. Meanwhile, let this haunt your consciences. May the burning building, our daughters in flames, be the nightmare that destroys your sleep, the poison that embitters your lives, the horror that kills your joy. And in the midst of celebrations for your children, may you be struck blind with fear at the memory of this red avalanche until time erases you.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have?
On the first charge of manslaughter in the first degree, do you find the defendants guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second charge of manslaughter in the second degree, do you find the defendants guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Is that the verdict of all of you?
That's right. That's the verdict of all of us.
Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes your service. The defendants are free to go.
146 dead. No one guilty.
Evidence of 100 witnesses failed to convict men.
Harrison Blank leave court with a strong police guard to protect them.
Throng in the streets hisses and reviles defendants.
As long as the working girl has no vote, she will get no justice. Such justice goes against any man's interest.
I seen you! I heard every word! You're not scary, you're just greedy old men! You should be locked up!
Fancy! Murderers! God sees you! He knows what you did!
What made up your mind in this case?
I believe the piece of charred wood and the lock with the shot bolt that the state put into evidence. But I believed also the testimony that the key was usually in the door and that it was tied to it with a piece of string. So I had the thought in my mind that during the first rush to the door, some panic-stricken girl turned the key in an effort to open it. And if that is so, then Harris and Blanc could not have known of it, as the judge demanded they should to be convicted. I cannot see how anyone was responsible for this disaster. Seems to me it was an act of the Almighty.
What is your occupation, sir?
I'm a factory owner.
Triangles are smuggled out of courtroom.
Women urge new triangle trial. Suffragists and Women's Trade Union League demand punishment.
Triangle bosses settle 23 civil suits. Families of the dead get $75 each.
Juror regrets verdict. Says Crane's charge left him no choice.
Triangle bosses get $445 a life from insurance companies.
Dear Mama, I think of that day every day. Every day, I hear the bell ring and I run down the stairs. I smell the smoke, but I keep going down. Every day, I try to run back in to save Margaret, and I trip. I fall. I scream at the policeman to let me go. Please, let me go back inside. Every day. Please, don't be mad or sad or anything. Someone has to pay for what happened. Love, Max.
Plan for new triangle trial dropped.
Brother of Triangle fire victim commits suicide. Note blames Harris and Blank.
Sorry for your loss. He was a good worker. I'm so sorry.
You're drunk.
Almost always now.
Go home then.
I've been to everyone, you know.
Everyone, what?
Funerals. This makes 147 funerals, and no one says a word to me. I say, I'm sorry, and they say nothing. See? Nothing. I did what I was told. Put me on trial. Nobody puts me on trial. But nobody forgives me either.
I forgive you. Yes.
I don't deserve it. But thank you. Thank you.
I should go with the others.
Please tell Mrs. Schwartz if there's anything I can do.
There is something, but it's for me.
What is it?
Talk to Mr. Harris for me. We're trying to bring my little cousin over, and I need a better job.
You want me to talk to Mr. Harris?
Yes, please?
Didn't you hear? You fired me.
Oh,
You still forgive me?
no.
When a stranger dies, it's easy to stay impartial. But when it's dozens of your neighbors, it's impossible not to editorialize. So, here's my opinion. If Harrison Blank had been found guilty, the entire episode would have been forgotten in a week. But the law said there was no murder, so this became 146 deaths by natural causes. And as always the case with natural causes, everyone had an opinion about what exactly went wrong.
I would be a traitor to those poor burned bodies if I came here today to talk good fellowship. We have tried you, good people of the public, and we have found you wanting. This is not the first time girls have been burned alive in our city. Every week, I must learn of the untimely death of one of my sister workers. Every year, thousands of us are maimed. There are so many of us for every one job. It matters little if 146 of us are burned to death. We have tried you, citizens. We are trying you now. And you've thrown a few dollars to the sorrowing mothers and brothers and sisters by way of a charity gift. And each time the workers protest in the only way that they know how, the strong arm of the law pushes down heavily upon us. I cannot talk fellowship. Too much blood has been shed. In my experience, the working people can expect no aid from the law. The only way to save yourself is to create a strong working class movement.
The verdict rendered by the jury in the Triangle case proves that conditions have not changed. I can only ask that this want of the recognition of the individual value of each poor girl's right to protection will awaken the womanhood of this country to the necessity of cooperation, and that all classes of women will be bound by a sisterhood too strong, too brave, too intelligent to bear much longer their disenfranchisement.
When I was a girl, girls worked at home. Cleaning, sewing, cooking. Here in America, girls work in stores, on the street, in factories. Good for them if they want to. But even if they work like men, they're still girls. Who will protect them? No one can protect them all. So I don't blame some official. I don't blame the bosses even. I say that every man and woman in this city is responsible for this fire. We are all at the mercy of each other. We are all responsible.
In the months following the verdict, the inquiry into who was to blame gave way to a new question. What do we do now? Weep all day, every day? Kill ourselves? Kill others so that we share the same terrible power that God seems to wield at his whim? How, in the end, do we bear the crushing burden of survival? There was, of course, no satisfactory answer, but we struggled to find one anyway.
200 testify before Fire Commission.
8 safety laws passed in the wake of the fire.
Fire Commission expands scope throughout state.
Committee on Safety reports 74 buildings and forces 71 to comply with the law.
Spring is upon us once again. This season's collection of Simpson and Crawford's lawn shirtwaists are bursting forth in colors as lovely as early spring flowers.
25 laws pushed through state legislature by Factory Investigation Committee.
Union membership increases 8-fold in 4 years.
New spring fashion, the racket waists. Norfolk waists of white or tan linen with collars and cuffs of piqué.
Censors Triangle Company. Fire prevention inspectors find it still disregards regulations.
19th Amendment ratified. Women win vote.
French handmade, hand-embroidered lingerie shirtwaists in Neptune green, antique gold, and Thames gray. Waists with tucked fronts, mousquetaire sleeves, and lace edging.
Max Blank charged with locking employees in his new factory.
Fewer fires here. Decrease in the last 6 months to the rate of 2,452 a year.
Smart, dainty, and not the minute. This lingerie waist is a charming combination of lace insertions, embroidered medallions, and pin tucks.
Harris and Blank sued for sewing fake Consumers League labels into waists.
Girls brave Gale in a fire drill.
First of a series of tests conducted by Edward F. Croker, formerly fire chief.
Our new line will change the way you dress forever.
We have to go.
You're fine.